Hey there, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and yeah, a whole lot of Sabrina Carpenter, and it's Billboard BREAKDOwn.
I don't remember.
So on the one hand, it's profoundly annoying that Billboard was actually late delivering their data when I was assembling this. I'm already operating on a tight timeline, dealing with additional delays from Billboard for no adequately explained reason. It's exasperating. But on the other hand, it's a Sabrina Carpenter album bomb. We largely know what we're dealing with here in terms of new arrivals. So if you're looking for me to further expand on the review I put out on the main channel long form last week, this might be the time for it. Strap in, it's gonna go long. But here's what actually caught me off guard. Our top 10, where Golden from K-Pop Demon Hunters is still at number 1, dominant on sales and streaming, and with just enough radio, it held up over any album bomb encroachment thanks to strength across the board. And when you follow that with Ordinary by Alex Warren holding at number 2, because despite radio losses, it's still on top there, and it's got rock solid sales and the streaming's robust, and ahead of all but one Sabrina Carpenter song on the streaming charts, have me look at that album bomb a little more closely, because our only new arrival in the top 10 is Tears by Sabrina Carpenter, where I seriously thought it'd make a play for number 1, but it didn't take the top spot on streaming, and without a bigger edge on sales and the radio push slow to start, it's currently stranded at number 3. Then we got Manchild by Sabrina Carpenter, which did go up to number 4, and saw a very strong streaming recovery, the radio surge in earnest, but the sales margins long faded, so it doesn't quite have enough to get any higher. So then we got the expected K-Pop Demon Hunters song holding sway courtesy of largely stable streaming, with Your Idol at number 5 and Soda Pop at number 6, and they were still enough to hold over What I Want by Morgan Wallen featuring Tate McRae down at number 7, which really got shoved back on streaming, but enough faltering growth on the radio is going to prevent it from dropping any further. Similar case for Love Me Not by Raven Lenae at number 8, where despite hitting a radio peak, that presence is enough to hold its spot despite the loss of streaming position. Whereas How It's Done from K-Pop Demon Hunters was able to hold its streaming stable and thus keep its position at number 9. K-Pop Demon Hunters and streaming longevity, it's certainly a thing. Finally, Lose Control by Teddy Swims, which seems to be finally getting the push out at number 10 across the board. We've been down this road a number of times over the past 2 years. I think I'm gonna believe it when I actually see it happen. And that naturally takes us to our losers and dropouts. As expected, we got a lot of bigger names in both. In the latter group, I can't say I'm that unhappy that Birds of a Feather by Billie Eilish is finally gone, alongside 30 for 30 by SZA and Kendrick Lamar, Apartment by Rose and Bruno Mars, and both Love Somebody and TN by Morgan Wallen. The former is probably gonna land on the year-end list for 2025, the latter will probably come up short, probably same for Bloodline by Alex Warren and Jelly Roll, which is also gone, but I guess that's to be expected. But coming back to Morgan Wallen, he actually had a considerable number of losers here too. I'm the Problem at 26, 20 Cigarettes at 71, Miami with Lil Wayne and Rick Ross at 85, I Ain't Coming Back with Post Malone at 87, and Superman at 91. Could also probably include I Had Some Help by Post Malone with Morgan Wallen featuring at 35 there too. Outside those, Mariah the Scientist saw the expected album drop back with Burning Blue at 42, and Is It a Crime with Kali Uchis at 84. Similar for Hell at Night by BigXThaPlug featuring Ella Langley at 48, and Drake continued to see losses with What Did I Miss at 62, and Which One with Central C at 96. Then off the debut, Jealous Type by Doja Cat collapsed down to 49, and Different Species by Offset and Gunna went down to 99, and then for the continued losses, The Subway by Chappell Roan hit 50, Outside by Cardi B's at 88, man, bad sign for that album, and So Far So Fake by Pierce the Veil losing the virality at 92. And to finish things off, All the Bars Are Closed by Thomas Rhett at 54, 6 Months Later by Megan Maroney at 65, and Your Way's Better by Forrest Frank mercifully down to 74. Thank God for that. Feels kind of ironic to say that there. But now for our gains and returns. Well, there were no returns, but we did get 2 gains. And yeah, I'm not remotely happy that Eternity by Alex Warren recovered up to 73. You couldn't have kept Bloodline going instead? Come on. But at least Man I Need by Olivia Dean got a big surge off the debut to 55. I'd really like to see her get some traction stateside for that song. It's really quite great. Now, this would be where I would mention that Sabrina Carpenter is very much in album bomb territory, but she only had 11 new songs. And that places her below the largest size from my categorization, and all of them debuted inside the top 40. So, by his own rules, guess who has to talk about all of them this week? Joy! But before all of those, the rest of our new arrivals, starting off with number 98, South of Sanity by Zach Top.
She's left me somewhere south of Sanity, still just north of insane.
Not gonna lie, I was extremely pleased to see 2 Zach Top songs break through this week, even amidst all the Sabrina Carpenter. Yeah, it's neo-traditional, teetering on the line of a workman-like Alan Jackson ripoff instead of homage, but if the songs are strong enough, that is a formula too entrenched in my psyche for me to seriously dislike it. And here, well, I hear a little more George Strait in that this feels like the first-person adaptation of the classic song I Can Still Make Cheyenne, about a touring radio act who can't get home and his partner winds up leaving him behind while he's on the road. Zach Top's version is less immediately melancholic, more anxious and heartbroken as a last moment of panic as he's only got a few more stops to go chasing this dream and yet she's leaving. It's the low point at the end of the second act. As such, I don't think it's got quite the same magnetism as I Can Still Make Cheyenne. Again, that song's a classic, especially given how minor key this track is as a whole, but the liquid pedal steel, the gentle acoustics, and sad piano utterly nail that palette so well, I can't help but like this a lot anyways. I'm a little bit shocked a cut this deep and sad managed to chart at all, but the quality's here, and it's well deserved. Check this out. You should hear it. Number 97, She Ready by Key Glock.
She blowing up my phone, talking about like when you going home because
I feel like there's a part of me that wants to like Key Glock a little bit more than I do. Over the past couple of years of isolated low-charting singles, he hasn't been bad so much as kind of uneven, and thus with this, well, the liberal and partially chipmunked mid-60s sample of Barbara Mason, it's not exactly my thing around the watery guitars, but the fizzy knock of the trap percussion's decently mastered for once, and Key Glock manages to find an okay pocket amidst it all for his flow, but I can't say for this sort of sex jam he's the best fit for it. Using the term ready spaghetti, it's ridiculous at best. The line about him being 3-legged isn't far behind, and the rest of the flexing feels really underwhelming. Between comparing his diamonds to Captain Crunchberries and how he's just fine being bad by himself, way to kill the mood, dude, saying you don't even want her there. So yeah, a whole lot of things that just don't really work for me. It's not bad, but not exactly good either. Next, number 75, Good Times and Tan Lines by Zach Top.
Summer nights, that was all there was to life. Good times and tan lines. Good times and tan lines.
Okay, full disclosure, this is the sort of track I'm just not that interested in hearing from Zach Top, but it's not entirely his fault. Mostly because this was the sound I didn't particularly like from Alan Jackson in his realm of good time beach songs and Jimmy Buffett collaborations either. Why wouldn't Zach Top catch the easiest check in his life and make one? Especially with that lead guitar line's a half step away from Chattahoochee by way of Mercury Blues. Now, I will say, that is one hell of a pedigree when you've got the warm fiddles and the pedal steel alongside the very pleasant electric guitar bounce. Zach Top certainly has a little bit more of a budget than Alan Jackson had in '93, and I guarantee the kids who weren't raised on 90s neo-traditional country radio the way I was wouldn't remember some of those songs as quickly. But couple that with a few high notes, I don't think Zach Top hits particularly well, and the song teeters into more playful homage than putting a fresh spin on the concept, especially when he really could have afforded a few more personal, idiosyncratic details, make it his own. It's still good, mind you. Zach Top is pulling from the best, but it is a pull. I'd prefer South of Sanity if we're hoping for a track to catch on. That's all. Number 39, Don't Worry, I'll Make You Worry by Sabrina Carpenter.
I'll make you worry like no other girl can, so don't worry. I'm sure I'll never let you know where you stay.
Alright, the rest of these are Sabrina Carpenter tracks that I've already talked about in some form in my review. I'm going to endeavor for everyone's sake and patience to try to keep these short. So of the Jack Antonoff produced cuts, I probably like the production here more than most, with the supple guitars and the pillowy overdubs around the synth gloss. It's certainly pretty in a late 80s Robin Sparkles lane, if you catch my drift, which is intended for the whole funny, ironic juxtaposition, and still really leaves a sour taste in my mouth. I know we're supposed to treat all this as ironic, or that it's a big joke she keeps this guy around as if how she treats him, but the sheer amount of gaslighting bullshit shoved into this, where Sabrina outright admits that she's screwing with his head with the silent treatment and turning his family against him, and he's ultimately going to wind up loving this as he becomes a shell of a man. Her words, not mine. I remember giving Meghan Trainor hell for this on Dear Future Husband a decade ago for how creepy and gross it was. Sabrina might have better production, she does not get a pass. Even if you're taking it as a pure melodramatic power fantasy and playing into the whole negative dumb guy stereotypes of the manipulative mean girl, I don't hear what power she gains as being all that satisfying. If everyone's so stupid, they're not gonna grasp your joke here. So yeah, starts off pretty bad. Let's keep going to number 33, Goodbye by Sabrina Carpenter.
To be the one who cries. Can't have your cake and eat it too. By walking out, that means you choose goodbye.
Alright, credited this one to the ABBA riff with the strings and the gentle acoustics with some ramped up late 60s Baroque theatricality on the bridge with the horns is pretty nice, even if I think the subject matter here is pretty rancid. I like the rollicking groove driven off the twinkling keys and Carpenter's tighter multi-tracking. And good thing I like that, because the run here is that it's a breakup, but oh no, they keep winding up in bed with each other because those crazy cats just can't get over each other. And the whole joke here is that this guy keeps telling her goodbye in certain languages and he keeps showing back up. He doesn't get the message. But Sabrina Carpenter keeps letting him back in because she still cares. I know it's pointless to highlight how toxic the entire situation actually is in reality, and she should know better. At least here she's got a bit more vulnerability and a little less cartoonish malice. We'll get to more of that. But I can't shake the feeling of ugly emptiness watching it all play out. The theater kid arrangement at least sells some melodrama. I can buy into it a little more, but not that much. Number 31, We Almost Broke Up Again Last Night by Sabrina Carpenter.
We had our sex and then we made amends. That's right, called it a false alarm to all of our friends. Then we almost broke up again last night.
And speaking of the on and off again relationships that test my patience, this is a mid-album slow burn, beginning with a husky, acoustic, Billie Eilish-esque approach before the arrangement picks up more Baroque flourishes with all the twinkles and the strings, and that sets up the framing that honestly feels a little too tasteful for this sort of back and forth, where they basically only seem to be together for the cheap sex, the lingering physical attraction, and telling their friends about all of their drama. And I don't know, maybe it's just that I'm in my mid-30s and I've had friends who go back and forth with a partner who is very clearly bad for them, and yet you gotta hear about their drama play out long past the point of any sense. But if you're not going to have Jack Antonoff play it up in the arrangement, it feels kind of tedious, almost routine, frustratingly empty. The line I truly hate is, at least we give them something to talk about, as if we're all enraptured by this process. Because if this is how you're treating the stakes of this relationship, as we see it play out in explicit but weirdly flat details across this album, can for everyone's sake say single, figure your shit out? See, I can't stand this. Skip it. Number 30, Never Getting Laid by Sabrina Carpenter.
Window pane, We share a lifetime full of happiness and a forever of never getting laid.
So there's a slew of mostly comedic songs where post-breakup you don't wish the best for your ex, you wish them a slew of disasters, or for the next layer of the joke, a series of minor inconveniences. Gabby Barrett's big hit in 2020, I Hope, was this, where she projected a relationship that fails on this ex and was a kind of a nauseating sign of the distinctly conservative tract where her music would eventually go. An utter lack of maturity in the commodification of relationships and happiness, especially treating any other girl involved that hooks up as disposable with another disregard to her feelings. What happened to solidarity? Especially as you can't argue that would not factor in, given how otherwise imaginative these myopic revenge fantasies are. Thankfully, this is a little better than that, with its watery slow burn R&B patter and a bunch of synths borrowed from Miley Cyrus's Endless Summer Vacation, but only just barely, because Carpenter's venom at this guy's wandering eye post-relationship leaves her wishing that he never moves on. The happiness with her was always out of reach, that he gets agoraphobia and can't go outside, or that he's just stuck jerking off and should learn to embrace abstinence. And again, I know what the joke is when all of this is Sabrina Carpenter drunk and insecure and venting, but in the adage that lingers over this album, what's often said and done ironically is often meant unironically, especially when the audience can't tell the difference, and man, Carpenter's making the most of trying to play both sides. I don't hate this. Again, the framing feels a bit more honest. I get why some folks might find catharsis, but yeah, I don't care for it either. Number 27, House Tour by Sabrina Carpenter.
Get to the first, second, third floor, and I promise none of this is a metaphor. I just want you to come inside. Baby, what's mine is now yours.
Okay, to her credit, I don't think Sabrina Carpenter is a problem on this song at all. It's a sex song full of double entendres, taking a partner who's new around her house. She says it's not a metaphor on the hook, but that's very clearly bullshit. She knows exactly what she's doing. From the pineapple air freshener to the cookies to never entering to the back door to the wax floors. It's cheeky. It very clearly thinks it's more clever than it is, when it's just way harder to shock me in this land in 2025. But when you pair it with some of the panning effects about people running around the house, that could be fun. But man, this is where Jack Antonoff's production lets her down in spades. This sounds like the sort of squonking, over-arranged dregs of 80s synth pop that stuck around too long into the early 90s for teen pop soundtracks, especially with every over-arranged clatter of percussion and a bass line that should have way more swagger than it does. If there's a song that feels really rushed and weirdly cheap in the arrangement, especially ending so abruptly after the bridge, it's this. So yeah, sadly a case where it's one of the least obnoxious songs on the album and it's let down by the sound. In comparison with number 24, Go-Go Juice by Sabrina Carpenter.
Girl who knows her liquor is a girl who's been dumped. Sipping on my go-go juice, I can't be blamed. Some good old-fashioned fun sure knows the pain.
So yeah, this is my favorite song of Man's Best Friend, and man, even then, comparing it to Juno or Bedchem just last year, it feels kinda underwhelming. I do appreciate the supple pop country arrangement, with a little bit of a jaunty Dolly Parton-esque flair to the rollicking hook and that fiddle that punches in before the bridge. It certainly feels kinda ragged for the barroom sing-along, but that fits a track where Sabrina Carpenter's drunk at a bar and she's dialing all those exes for all the wrong reasons, where there's a little bit of edge in the rhyming reference points to a bunch of real-world exes that she has, especially with the one that rhymes with villain. But even there, okay, I'm not going to make a lot out of the line, got a soft spot for a bev and a boy that's fruity. I've seen some of the backlash and how one might characterize the gay best friend, but Sabrina Carpenter spent the weekend at the VMAs taking a much bolder stance as an ally than a lot of her colleagues in the industry. I'd argue even if it's just optics, that matters. But I don't know, the song itself feels a little bit easy, especially if you know your pop country and have heard this template done many times before. I do appreciate its playfulness, and if there's a song from Man's Best Friend that sticks around, I hope it would be this one. Certainly more so than number 20, Sugar Talking by Sabrina Carpenter.
Your sugar talking isn't working tonight.
So this is the sort of song that has me questioning how Sabrina Carpenter sees the men that she dates. Because even despite John Ryan being a better fit for this sort of production, with the watery guitar blend and the cooing overdubs to some of the thicker percussion around her, there's a line between telling a guy to shut up and kiss me and what she does here. Apparently this guy's got a lot of words, where Carpenter feels like she has been through this song and dance time and time before, even as he's buying her flowers, he's willing to pay for more. She just doesn't think it's sincere if the relationship is on and off again, and he keeps repeating a lot of the same lines. But also lines from her like, "You're having these epiphanies," big word for a real small mind, has me thinking if she's treating him like he's this stupid, I get why he's hesitant to stick around. Hell, the dumb choice might be him thinking it's a good idea to come back. And of course, that's part of some subtextual ironic joke that Sabrina Carpenter can be her own worst enemy when picking men, but with the weary way she ends off the song, I don't hear that self-aware wink at the camera. I hear bored exasperation, and it's not remotely charming. Production might be otherwise okay, but otherwise, no, this sucks. Next. Number 17, When Did You Get So Hot by Sabrina Carpenter.
Get your place, baby, baby, the second in the pot. When did you get hot? Yeah.
I think I tend to like Sabrina Carpenter when she's single, more on the prowl than any of the torrid attempts at relationship melodrama. This is another case of that. But even then, there's something about the vibe of this that rubs me the wrong way. I mean, she's out, she gets introduced to a guy she knew when he was way younger, but he grew up and he got hot, and now she's kind of tripping over herself trying to entice him against a warping synth clatter that feels imported from the turn of the millennium, and some smoldering R&B guitar, along with the coos that make the Ariana Grande comparison all the more explicit. And yeah, I know the joke is, once again, it's supposed to be on her with all the bad pickup lines, given that she overlooked this guy before. But there's this underlying capricious entitlement that reminds me a little too much of Break Up With Your Girlfriend, I'm Bored, where she still feels the need to call the guy ugly before on her verse, which has the vibe of the popular mean girl growing up and trying to rebalance the power, put him back under heel. I mean, guys in this situation, they either haven't fully come into their confidence, having gotten hotter, or just go straight to their heads. And either way, even if I like the production, there's something about her pursuit, especially in the context of the album, that feels kind of unpleasant. I don't care what level of irony it's even on. And speaking of which, number 15, My Man on Willpower by Sabrina Carpenter. So here's a fun question. What or who does Sabrina Carpenter even want in a relationship? I'm genuinely serious about this. I have reviewed 4 of her albums thus far, and how she views or treats partners has me wondering if she even knows or cares beyond the sex and the cheap drama. And hey, if that's all you're looking for, and the guy might be up for it, fine. But it speaks to a cadre of dumb dudes that as soon as they figure out how Sabrina Carpenter is going to treat them, they bolt. Do I think it's indicative of how a lot of guys treat women? Just gender swapped? Absolutely, I can buy that implication. I've been the killjoy calling that shit out in multiple genres for over a decade now. Hi, Drake. But there's something kind of gross here where the guy in the song is actually framed as loving and emotionally secure, but the second he starts thinking about the relationship, he gets distant, he bolts, leaving her sexually frustrated that the guy developed a working brainstem, or in her words, willpower. And again, the intention of the joke seems to be on her, as the jaunty jingle with frail acoustics and the strings around the glittery goop of the synth that sounds like a made-for-TV Disney musical leftover. But I'm hearing this in the context of the album, where his now mature choice to leave, it makes all the sense in the world, and I don't hear the self-awareness from her to identify or change anything. Again, I'm starting to get really sick of plotting what level of irony we're even on when I don't think the song's even that good. Speaking of which, number 12, Nobody's Son by Sabrina Carpenter.
It's all deceiving, there's nobody's son, not anyone left for me to believe in.
No joke, I had a sinking feeling of dread when I heard that this was the track going viral on TikTok, because it feels like the epicenter of this album's ugliness in a really bad way. On the one hand, the staccato jitter of the guitars and warbling synths sound like all the natural extension of the bad production choices on Please 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 last year, especially with how canned Carpenter's vocal lead sounds and the oily warble of the strings. But then we get the content, where Sabrina Carpenter seems to sound pretty heartbroken that this guy wound up leaving her, where she will lash out with confusion and anger, specifically targeting the parents of this dude, saying that he should have been raised right to love her. And you know what, to be fair, if I buy that this is self-aware yet again, and how most of what she's saying feels entitled and melodramatic, it's just a wallow where she resents being the third wheel in other people's relationships now, you know what, there's a lane for that, especially as she's intending the meta text to call out all those who would be judgmental about all the sex she's having and all the references to it. But that's not where the song draws its pathos now, is it? Especially in the album's context. Because she's pissed the guy left her because he needs to figure out his emotional maturity and self-control, his words. Where if you hear the rest of the stories on this album, it feels more than justified, and thus it starts feeling like a tantrum where Sabrina Carpenter is not getting what she wants, with the whip cracks across the bridge highlighting it and how she wants to bring the guys in line. I don't know, there's a lot of manipulative songs on this album about the immature and exhausting relationships, where if you want to indulge the melodrama, that's your prerogative, just make it sound a little better, because nothing about this works for me. I go back and forth whether or not it's the worst track on the album between this, Sugar Talking, and We Almost Broke Up Again Last Night, but it's in that group. It's pretty awful. Ugh. And finally, number 3, Tears by Sabrina Carpenter.
Being a responsible guy, treating me like you're supposed to do. Tears run down my thighs.
And now we got the big single, already getting discourse because the line "tears run down my thighs" and all the evocative, sexually charged imagery that evokes. The horny angst of dating someone, get this, who has their life put together. And you know what, let's put aside how on multiple other songs it doesn't make a lick of sense how she's reacted to guys who are getting their lives together. As a grown-ass man in his mid-30s, some of these lines have me roll my eyes pretty hard. I mean, you're turned on by a guy who can do the dishes, assemble IKEA furniture, pay attention to her feelings. I thought that was the standard. Use a phone properly? I know that the joke is supposed to be on her, that she's this desperate and pathetic asking for things that are this basic, but not only does it feel oversold with her choice of examples, like not even that believable, but there's this condescending edge that again has me questioning what LA dullard she's dating. On some level, across the album, starts feeling like a choice. And that's the other thing. In the album's context, it starts seeming like as soon as these guys realize how badly she treats them, they leave. And it's hard to blame them given how she talks. So it comes across less like she wants men who can function basically in society, and more like she wants a himbo that she can control, ultimately mistreat, and then discard. Again, I can tell she's trying to make a point jabbing at gender norms because it's not gonna be okay when dudes talk about women like this, but some of us call this out whenever the manosphere-pilled hip-hop and R&B scene does this shit too. Again, hi Drake. But even if the joke is always going to be on her, how many folks are going to get that joke when the pathos ultimately comes from the desperate, backwards-looking framing of gender roles that feel imported from a hacky 90s sitcom, or the explicit sex references that overpower the conversation? And the sad thing is that I actually think the sound of the song has some flair. I like the shikata ad-libs around the fat bass line and watery disco, the slight key changes for the verses, her hushed cooing vocal arrangement that feels deeply indebted to whenever Ariana Grande tries to sound sexy. Has me wondering why Ariana's never done the disco pivot. But otherwise, it's a pretty sleek and well-constructed, likable pop song. But as someone who's trying to meet this album where it is, yeah, I guess it's fine. But I think the plot's been lost as a whole, at least a little bit. And yeah, that's our week. I know, way too long, but thankfully we got an easy best here with South of Sanity by Zach Top. And sure, I'll give Go-Go Juice by Sabrina Carpenter the honorable mention. It is a good song, probably my favorite. The worst of the week, I think it could be a 3-way tie, but nobody's son is going to get that slot because of how much I just can't stand the production and pathology that's running between the lines, with We Almost Broke Up Again Last Night as the obvious dishonorable mention. Next week, Ooh, yeesh, the fallout from this is not going to be pretty. Stay tuned for that. But until then, I'm Mark. You're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse. And I'll see you next time.